Yeah, absolutely. And one of the key things that concerns me sometimes is the speed at which businesses react or respond to these change needed, to certain changes needed, not just from a tech perspective, but also their internal policy and process perspective.
Mhm.
Do you think that the reports that say by 2020, 40% of UK's workforce will become external, so, contractors and temps, do you feel that the businesses are coping with that speed internally or not really?
No, I don't. And I think everyone talks a lot about millennials,
Hmm.
and the changing desire of how millennials want to work. And I think it's really important to be addressed. But I also, it's a little bit like the technology discussion, don't get too distracted with it. Because actually it's not a millennials thing. It's actually a societal thing right now, right? People want to have a different balance in how they conduct themselves through life.
Yeah.
The days of sacrificing yourself to the corporate in order to get your retirement, those are gone. We all know they're gone. And so the appetite for people to do much more contract orientated work is there. And I remember Andrew Banks from Talent 2 talking about blue sky thinking, where he was saying at some point in the future we have to acknowledge we'll rent brain power, we will rent people's capabilities, we'll rent their experience and skill sets. That time's now. I don't think we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are other factors that impact this. So until the entire mortgage arena changes and you can get mortgages on the basis of contract work, there will always still be an appetite for people to have a structured kind of salaried relationship with companies. But what is definitely shifting is people are no longer worried about doing an 18-month stint and then moving, or a 2-year stint and then moving. And also from being on the receiving end of that, from a talent acquisition perspective, we no longer read people's CVs in a way that says, oh, they've jumped about too much, that doesn't demonstrate, real core values. That kind of attitude has gone, because most of the work that people actually functionally do now is quite project orientated, because there's so much change happening that people are using those skill sets in a real project orientated way, which means that moving every 18 months to go and do something else makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a real shift in understanding of what value do people bring, how do we engage with that. And I think there's definitely better conversations going on at senior leadership about feeling comfortable to let people go because they'll come back. Do you know what I mean? And it will be a rotational thing. And so I think there's definitely positive signs in leadership and HR around that. I mean, it's still on a journey, but it's definitely going in a better direction, I think, to allow for real flexibility in the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
I still think the biggest problem is going to be that we just don't have enough people to do the jobs we want them to do. That's going to be a bigger issue than contract versus perm.
Absolutely. And I also think, if I may, that the fact that many businesses or recruiters are now changing the way they read CVs from a project to project basis is not still happening in majority of the businesses, because they're still relying on, oh, they haven't got 3 years experience. And I'm still hearing this. So maybe it is also very team-led. So talent acquisition leader and how they lead their teams, it's still very team and business-led, isn't it? It's not a core generic. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think, it depends on which company you're in, and it also depends on the industry, right? Some industries are still very tied to the conventions, and, other industries are taking a much quicker step forward. So I would say technology in particular, technology firms are taking a quicker step forward. They understand it more. Financial services, they're looking for that sort of longevity. Life sciences to a certain degree, but then you go into consumer and you go into industry, and again they are probably, particularly retail, leading the way in being a bit more forward thinking around talent acquisition, how to manage and think about individuals.